In December 1992, Playboy introduced Barbara Moore as its Playmate of the Month, a spread shot in the famed Playboy Mansion grotto by Arnie Freitag. Moore, then just 24, projected a blend of old Hollywood elegance and 90s glamour. Her photo shoot almost went off course when sudden rain flooded the grotto, forcing Freitag to pivot to dramatic lighting that now defines many of the layouts. Her spread appeared as Playboy celebrated its 40th anniversary, making Moore part of a symbolic era shift. She later appeared on The Tonight Show, launched a lingerie line, and dated Oasis's Noel Gallagher, transcending her Playmate label to build a personal brand of her own. Moore's story is one of turning a centerfold into a platform for reinvention. In 1959, on the French Riviera, Brigitte Bardot and actor Jacques Charrier married quietly in Paris's 16th arrondissement, while she was filming Babette Goes to War. Bardot's wedding band stayed hidden under her costumes on set, as paparazzi chased their honeymoon convertible through Saint-Tropez. Their romance, passionate and volatile, played out under a media frenzy. Within months, Bardot was pregnant and navigating the double life of actress and new wife. Their son Nicholas was born in January 1960, but by late 1962, their marriage collapsed under pressure of fame and jealousy. Their brief union became mythic, a snapshot of post-war France's collision of liberated sexuality and traditional expectations, forever tied to Bardot's legend as both icon and enigma. Under the sunlit palms of 1970s Los Angeles, Marilyn Lang appeared in Playboy's November 1974 issue, embodying the era's bold glamour. Discovered working as a Miami flight attendant, her athletic 5'10" presence and natural charm stood out among more overtly staged models. The shoot at the Beverly Hills Hotel, overseen by Hefner himself, leaned into a girl next door meets icon aesthetic during Playboy's peak circulation era. Lang later became Playmate of the Year in 1975. In a quirky twist, the Chicago Sting, NASL, drafted her in 1976, not as a player but as publicity, though she never suited up. Lang later pursued acting, appearing on TV and in cult films. Her story bridges glossy fantasy and real ambition. In the gritty 1950s world of B-movies, Kathy Marlowe, born Kathleen Maslovsky, carved out a cult niche as a platinum blonde who embraced camp with intelligence. After moving from Minneapolis to Hollywood in her teens, she adopted the name Marlowe and began appearing in low-budget sci-fi, noir, and exploitation films. In Queen of Outer Space, 1958, she traded quips with Zsa Zsa Gabor and embodied a space heroine in campy futurism. Marlowe resisted offers that might typecast her too narrowly and later shifted to television roles on Perry Mason and 77 Sunset Strip. She refused Playboy offers, believing they would trap her image. Her legacy lies in elevating B-movie kitsch into oddball iconography. In 1955, famed crime photographer Ouija brought his stark black-and-white lens to capture Betty Page, but not in her usual pin-up guise. Using distortion optics and mirroring effects, he transformed Page's playful persona into eerie, surreal forms. The results are both seductive and disquieting, dissolving her curves into fluid, abstract shapes. This was the same year Page secretly posed for Playboy's first anonymous centerfold. Her dual life, mainstream pinup and underground fetish muse, peaked in 1955 amid Senate hearings on obscenity. Ouija's images, once sidelined in retrospectives, now are prized in fine art archives. In those warped frames, Page's familiar iconography flickers into something uncanny, glamour as reflection and refraction. On the sun-drenched North Shore of Oahu in 1964, Susan Hart, Shelley Fabares, and Barbara Eden starred in Ride the Wild Surf, a drama that merged surf culture with classic Hollywood glamour. Hart, then contracted to American International Pictures, played Lily Kiloa, torn between societal expectations and her love for surfing culture. The film's big wave footage from Waimea Bay gave audiences a rare glimpse into real risk and athleticism. Behind the scenes, Hart married AIP co-founder James H. Nicholson, gaining control over extensive film rights after his passing. Fabarez and Eden, known for wholesome TV roles, embraced a more daring beach persona here. Their images as glamorous beach heroines live on in surf movie retrospectives and 60s pop iconography. On March 14, 1977, Debbie Harry ignited the stage at Toronto's Seneca College, embodying the raw tension of early New York punk. Photographed caught in that moment, her disheveled platinum fringe and ripped fishnets locked into gritty defiance, a stark contrast point to glam rock excess. Blondie opened for Iggy Pop that night, a clash of wild charisma and emerging new wave. That tour marked the band's expansion beyond Manhattan's underground. Backstage, Harry and guitarist Chris Stein jotted melodies late into the night. Within 2 years, Blondie would break with Parallel Lines and dominate charts. But this snapshot, it captures the spark before the explosion. In the summer of 1974, a 23-year-old Sally Mann turned her lens inward in her family's Lexington attic, producing a haunting self-portrait that foreshadowed her career. The grainy texture and drift of expired film speak to her early fascination with memory, decay, and light. Mann balanced motherhood. Her first child, Emmett, was born that year, with a sudden shift from writing to photography. This portrait, now part of MoMA's permanent collection, anticipates her later explorations of family, the South, and the invisible boundaries between intimacy and exposure. A quiet moment, yet one that marked the birth of a visual voice that would reverberate for decades. Lita Gloria, born Lita Nicoletti in 1908 Naples, rose from theater stages to become one of Italian cinema's most adaptable stars. By 1927, she had impressed audiences in Cyrano de Bergerac, executing daring stunts that contrasted with typical feminine roles. When sound cinema arrived, Gloria seamlessly transitioned in La Canzone dell'amore, 1930, Italy's first talking film. During the fascist era, she walked a tightrope, celebrated publicly yet privately supporting resistance artists. After WW2, she moved into character parts. Her turn in The Knights of Cabiria stands out as a disturbed Contessa. Her villa became a cultural salon. Her legacy lives in film archives and the memories of later generations she mentored. In 1956, a young Jane Mansfield turned a simple wardrobe test for The Girl Can't Help It into cinematic legend. Dressed in a fuchsia gown tailored tightly to her curves, she practiced her trademark swish while lighting tests revealed the Mansfield filter, a lens technique that made her platinum hair glow. Director Frank Tashlin choreographed her moves like live cartoons, and one sequence in which her figure melted a frozen milk bottle required dozens of takes to pass censors. The test images themselves spread across Hollywood lore. Mansfield's blend of satire and sex symbol arrived fully formed here. A woman who understood the camera could laugh with you, not just worship you. Fog drifted across RKO's sound stages in 1952 as Marilyn Monroe filmed Clash by Night, her first true dramatic role. Under director Fritz Lang's demanding gaze, she struggled to balance raw method emotion with Hollywood polish. Still known to crew members as Norma Jean, she clashed with Lang's perfectionism while learning discipline from Barbara Stanwyck. Between takes, she battled nerves so intense she often fell ill, yet her vulnerability transformed the Noir heroine into something human. Cinematographer Nicholas Musuraca, master of chiaroscuro, lit her like a diamond amid Monterey's gray docks. When the film premiered, critics glimpsed depth beneath the glamour. Today, Clash by Night marks Monroe's turning point, from ingenue to artist, capturing the moment she stopped posing for the camera and began commanding it. Born in Devon in 1935, Belinda Lee rose from drama student to Britain's answer to Marilyn Monroe. Discovered at RADA, she signed with Rank Organization and dazzled audiences in The Runaway Bus, 1954, and The Feminine Touch, 1956. Her beauty and daring roles drew both praise and scandal, especially after her affair with Italian actor Gabriele Ferzetti sent her career overseas. In Rome, she thrived briefly under Fellini's lens before tabloids overshadowed her artistry. Seeking reinvention, she fled to Spain, drawn to flamenco and freedom. In 1961, at only 26, she died in a California car crash, ending a life as intense as her performances. Decades later, retrospectives honor her not as a fallen starlet, but as a symbol of 1950s fame's volatility. Radiant, restless, and gone too soon. With flame-red hair and boundless charisma, Anne Margaret burst into the 1960s as Hollywood's electric new face. Dubbed the female Elvis, she electrified audiences in Viva Las Vegas 1964 opposite Presley, blending sensuality, humor, and powerhouse vocals. Yet she proved far more than a bombshell. In the 1970s, she earned Oscar nods for Carnal Knowledge 1971 and Tommy 1975, defying stereotypes with fearless range. A devastating 1972 stage fall nearly ended her career, but she roared back to Vegas triumphs and television acclaim. Through 6 decades and an enduring marriage to Roger Smith, Anne Margaret turned survival into art. Today, she stands as a legend of stamina and sparkle, proof that true stars don't fade. They reinvent the light that made them shine. Blonde ambition defined Jane Mansfield, the 1950 siren who turned publicity into performance art. From her Playboy debut, 1955, to The Girl Can't Help It, 1956, she played fame like jazz, bold, brassy, and brilliant. Her heart-shaped mansion, pink Cadillac, and whirlwind marriage to Mickey Hargitay made her tabloid royalty. Beneath the sparkle, Mansfield was a savvy marketer who negotiated contracts and studied law between shoots. Her life ended abruptly in 1967, but her legacy endures through daughter Mariska Hargitay, whose own stardom carries that fearless spark. Posters, drag tributes, and vintage fashion revivals keep Jane alive. A reminder that glamour, when wielded with wit, becomes something deeper than beauty. It becomes power immortalized in Technicolor. Brooklyn-born Vicki Dugan earned the nickname The Back for gowns plunging to her waist, daring statements in buttoned-up 1950s America. Her photo spreads in Life magazine and roles in the fuzzy pink nightgown 1957 made her a sensation among Rat Pack circles. But beyond the sparkle, Dugan understood image as rebellion. She crafted elegance that mocked prudery with a smile. When fashions shifted in the 1960s, she stepped away gracefully, reappearing decades later as retro culture's muse. Designers from Dior to Unworth resurrected her silhouette. At 95, her quiet dignity contrasts her fiery legend, proof that a woman can reclaim her narrative simply by turning her back and walking forward. In 1922, Polish-American dancer Gilda Gray jolted Broadway awake with one electrifying move, the shimmy. Within months, she was headlining the Ziegfeld Follies, her sequin dresses shedding beads as fast as taboos. Journalists called her hips a national threat to architecture. Behind the laughter lay hustle. Gray trademarked her dance, taught it for $5,000 a lesson, and became the jazz age's entrepreneurial queen. When Hollywood offered stardom, she found the cameras too still for her energy. The Depression stripped her fortune, but not her wit. She reinvented herself on radio, joking, "I made the 20s roar before they could meow." Today, her legacy ripples through every boundary-breaking performer from Madonna to Beyoncé, each echoing that fearless vibration of freedom. Under blinding studio lights, Rita Hayworth perfected the sultry glove peel of Gilda, 1946, creating an icon of desire. Born Margarita Cancino, she endured painful makeovers, bleached hair, reshaped hairline to fit Hollywood's mold. Yet behind that transformation was discipline and artistry. Her collaborations with Orson Welles yielded masterpieces like The Lady from Shanghai, mirroring their tumultuous marriage. By the 1950s, studios deemed her past her prime, but Rita defied them, insisting on realism over illusion. Later battling Alzheimer's, she remained adored worldwide. The gilded dress, the music, the glance, all immortal symbols of glamour and endurance. Hayworth taught cinema that perfection has a price, but authenticity has a soul. In 1954, Tony Curtis and Janet Leigh epitomized Hollywood perfection, smiling beneath flashbulbs at premieres, every inch the golden couple. Behind the gloss, ambition tugged them apart. Tony craved serious roles beyond charm. Janet sought respect beyond innocence. Between film sets and press tours, they wrestled with fame's double edge, adoration that devoured privacy. Their union produced 2 daughters, including future Psycho star Jamie Lee Curtis, ensuring their story never truly ended. Though divorce followed, their photographs remain timeless studies of mid-century celebrity, beautiful, brittle, and breathtakingly human. Lee later said, "We played ourselves, but the script kept changing. Hollywood still hasn't written a truer line." During Gold Diggers of 1933, Joan Blondell turned struggle into sparkle. Clad in a gown of faux dollar bills, she belted, "We're in the money," with weary defiance that spoke to every jobless dreamer. Off-screen, she was tougher still, negotiating fair pay, feeding extras from her own lunch pail, and mocking studio censors with Bronx wit. Her humor was armor, her optimism rebellion. Nearly a century later, that same dress hangs in the Museum of Modern Art, its fading ink a relic of resilience. Every musical that finds joy in hardship owes Blondell a verse, proof that laughter, well-timed and unbreakable, can outlast any recession. Photographer Bruno Bernard captured Marilyn Monroe mid-laugh on the Niagara set, light glinting off the white dress that would define an era. In 1952, she was rewriting Fame's rulebook, using fan letters and photo leaks to wrest creative control from Fox. Critics saw glamour. Marilyn engineered strategy. She studied lighting, took notes in lipstick on napkins, and transformed vulnerability into weaponized charisma. That year's Playboy cover and Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, 1953, sealed her as both fantasy and feminist prototype, an artist crafting image before branding existed. Her words echo still. "They see themselves in my cracks." It was never just beauty. It was connection, luminous and fragile, forever caught between flash and shadow. In 1955, amid Rome's post-war rubble, Sophia Loren posed before Ormont Jiggly's lens, wrapped in a cashmere shawl, embodying Italy's rebirth. Her sultry defiance in the gold of Naples had already made her a local sensation, but these photos, earth, silk, and smoke, turned her into a global one. When producers asked her to lose weight for Boy on a Dolphin, she laughed. "My bones are Neapolitan, they don't shrink." That year, scandal flared over her secret marriage to Carlo Ponti, yet Loren faced it with regal composure. Between shoots, she debated cinema with Visconti over Midnight Pasta and declared, "We make stars from hunger, not privilege." Decades later, that shawl sold at Christie's, but its warmth endures. The moment a young woman from Pozzuoli showed the world that beauty born of struggle burns brighter and lasts longer than any studio's manufactured glow. Amid the opium haze of Fritz Lang's The Shanghai Gesture, 1941, Jean Tierney shed her debutante image to play Poppy, a gambling hall temptress whose tragedy glowed under chiaroscuro lights. At 21, she risked her career to portray moral ambiguity when Hollywood demanded purity. She fought censors, rewrote her ending, and studied dockside women for realism. "Ruin," she said, "is just freedom in high heels." Critics balked, but decades later, the film stands as noir's forbidden masterpiece, exotic, hypnotic, subversive. Off-camera, Tierney's courage foreshadowed the resilience she'd need through mental illness and heartbreak. Her gold Shangsam now rests in MoMA's archives, shimmering proof that beauty and rebellion can coexist. When future femme fatales emerged from the shadows, they were tracing the silhouette Tierney carved in smoke. A woman unafraid to look straight into the abyss and make it her stage. In 1953, at London's Les Ambassadeurs Club, Ian Fleming scrawled the recipe for the Vesper Martini into Casino Royale. 3 parts gin, 1 vodka, half quina lillet. The cocktail's chill mirrored Bond's psyche, elegant, lethal, and lonely. By Dr. No, 1962, bars from Hong Kong to Havana were overrun by men ordering it shaken, not stirred. Unaware, Fleming meant the line as satire. Over decades, ingredients vanished, quina lillet discontinued, gin weakened, leaving imitators chasing a ghost. The drink became both ritual and myth, blending Cold War sophistication with quiet heartbreak. Modern mixologists still chase its lost bitterness, like Bond chasing the women who betrayed him. Each glass is a reminder that invention often springs from pain. Fleming named the drink after a lover who left him. The twist? She returned, just not for long. In 1945, Joan Crawford strode into Warner Bros. In shoulder pads sharp enough to draw blood, fresh from her Mildred Pierce Oscar and ready to rewrite Hollywood's power map. Labeled box office poison, she rebuilt herself as the symbol of self-made steel. On set, her precision was ruthless. At home, her parties were wars of wit. Bette Davis sparring by the pool, Marilyn Monroe lingering at the bar. Crawford demanded respect long before feminism had a word for it. When her Pepsi executive husband died, she claimed his board seat, running meetings by day and filming Baby Jane by night. Behind the legend lay discipline bordering on obsession, red-penciled script notes, monogrammed towels, and the conviction that audiences didn't want truth, they wanted transformation. Crawford gave it to them, framed in light, forever untouchable, yet unmistakably human. The neon of Hollywood Boulevard flickered across 16-year-old Natalie Wood as she pressed her hands into wet cement outside Grauman's Theater, youth, ambition, and destiny immortalized in stone. From child wonder in Miracle on 34th Street to rebellious heart in Rebel Without a Cause, she matured under blinding spotlights. Yet she longed to be taken seriously, confessing, "They want me young forever, but I grew up fast." With West Side Story, 1961, and Love with the Proper Stranger, 1963, she shattered typecasting, earning acclaim for courage and emotional honesty. Off-screen, love and turmoil intertwined. Robert Wagner, Warren Beatty, Sinatra, the glitter and ghosts of mid-century fame. Her 1981 death at sea remains a mystery, but her art speaks louder. Wood's legacy isn't tragedy, it's evolution, a girl who mastered the camera before it ever mastered her. When Dolly Parton landed in London in 1978, rhinestones hit the runway like meteorites. Fresh from Here You Come Again's success, she stunned reporters with wit and self-awareness. "I know I look like a drag queen's dream, that's the point." Behind the sequence was strategy. She was battling Nashville's old boys, fusing country storytelling with pop sheen. London embraced her audacity. BBC stages, champagne nights with Elton John, laughter echoing through Tramp nightclub. Critics came to mock and left converted. Dolly's brilliance lay in contrast, soft-spoken Southern grace wrapped in armor of sparkle. That trip crowned her not just a singer, but a global brand built on sincerity and steel. When asked if she minded the jokes, she smiled. It takes a lot of money to look this cheap. And every rhinestone proved her priceless. Summer 1956. Brigitte Bardot turned Saint-Tropez into paradise incarnate. Filming And God Created Woman, she wandered barefoot across rocks, sun-drenched hair whipping in mistral winds, scandalizing a world still buttoned tight. The Vatican condemned her, audiences worshipped her. Bardot's rebellion was effortless. She made freedom itself look French. Off-camera, she raced sports cars, defied censors, and negotiated her own million-franc paydays. By her 30s, she retired to La Madrague, trading paparazzi for rescued animals, beauty for conviction. Decades later, her bikini hangs in a museum, but the spirit it represented, fierce autonomy, still glows. Bardot didn't invent desire, she redefined its ownership. For every woman who refused to apologize for taking up space, there's a trace of that barefoot girl laughing against the sea.
In 1966, on a yacht off Saint-Tropez, Audrey Hepburn sat barefoot, cigarette in hand, between takes of Two for the Road. No diamonds, no tiaras, just sunlight, linen, and quiet rebellion. Having outgrown the ingenue roles that defined her, she embraced flawed adulthood on screen. Divorced, independent, and radiant in simplicity, she debated scripts over sea urchins and laughed at the absurdity of love's messiness. Photographer Pierluigi Praterlan captured her not as a goddess, but as a woman rediscovering ease. Decades later, those candid shots remain her most intimate portrait. Hepburn without performance, grace without costume. The yacht became a floating museum, the striped shirt a fashion staple. Yet her greatest revelation wasn't style, it was serenity. She proved that elegance isn't restraint, it's the courage to exist unguarded in the sun.
Filming Vertigo in 1957, Kim Novak fought Hitchcock's control with quiet rebellion. Cast as the director's obsession, she refused to bleach her brows or lose her individuality. Beneath the lavender-gray suit he imposed, she wore red lingerie for power. The result was alchemy, fear and defiance merging into cinema's most haunting performance. While Hitchcock sculpted illusion, Novak injected humanity, tremor, breath, resistance. Critics once mocked her stillness, now it's seen as defiance, a portrait of a woman reclaiming gaze from its captor. Offset, she found solace in jazz clubs, sketching Coltrane at midnight. Decades later, the gray suit hangs in a museum, symbolizing every actress who dared to say no and still became unforgettable. Novak's eyes in that final scene don't plead, they accuse. The hunted became the author. In 1942, Veronica Lake floated across a broomstick under René Clair's direction, her golden hair veiling one eye like a spell. I Married a Witch brought wartime America laughter and longing in equal measure. Her peekaboo style became so popular that factory women copied it until accidents forced the government to urge victory roles instead. Off-camera, Lake's fiery wit matched her magic. When Frederick March slapped her in a scene, she retaliated by setting his trousers alight with a prop candle. Stardom flared fast and faded faster, but that film endures, its humor, glamour, and mischief still shimmering on screen. Her broomstick sold decades later for a small fortune, proof that even fleeting enchantment leaves permanent sparks. Every time a blonde tilts her head just so, a little Veronica still laughs. In the summer of 1933, the Warner Bros. Lot pulsed with Depression-era urgency as Glenda Farrell, Joan Blondell, and Phil Regan filmed We're in the Money. The set reeked of cigarette smoke, glue, and hope, Hollywood's holy trinity. Farrell, queen of wisecracks, drilled Blondell on timing between drags. Speed is everything, kid. Their lines flew faster than jazz riffs, a mirror to a nation desperate to laugh through hunger. Off-camera, they lived the parts. Blondell smuggling hooch in her garter belt, Farrell bargaining for equal pay, Regan crooning to extras who couldn't afford lunch. When the film premiered that August, audiences roared at Farrell's line, "I'd marry a kangaroo if he had a bankroll." 90 years later, the sets are gone. The stars long faded, but that frantic sparkle remains. The moment Hollywood turned poverty into poetry and survival into showbiz. In 1952, 19-year-old Debbie Reynolds danced herself bloody on MGM's backlot rehearsing Singin' in the Rain. Gene Kelly shouted, Donald O'Connor joked, and Debbie, barefoot, bleeding, smiling, kept going. I wasn't their first choice, she'd later grin, but I'd be their last. That grit made her America's sweetheart, even when life turned cruel. In 1959, Eddie Fisher left her for Elizabeth Taylor, and Reynolds transformed heartbreak into performance, Vegas shows, sequence, and defiance. She built an empire from pain, saving Hollywood relics others trashed, and proving talent could outlast scandal. When she died in 2016, one day after daughter Carrie Fisher, she left behind more than tap shoes and charm. She left endurance wrapped in a smile. Her secret? Fake the confidence until your blisters callous over. The girl who couldn't dance became the rhythm that never stopped. In 1926, on the lawn of the Los Angeles Athletic Club, Helene Costello and Myrna Loy bowled under the jazz summer sun, two starlets laughing before fate diverged. Costello, the seasoned silent darling, was about to headline Warner's first all-talking picture. Loy, still trapped as the exotic vamp, practiced diction between throws, determined to trade turbans for wit. They toasted with bootleg gin, gossiping about Chaplin and studio politics, unaware the sound revolution would crown one and crush the other. Within a decade, Costello vanished into obscurity, while Loy reigned as Hollywood's wittiest sophisticate. The photo remains: striped sweaters, rolled trousers, carefree smiles. Youth suspended before ambition hardened. The lawn is gone, the club remodeled, but that laughter echoes across time. Two women stealing an afternoon from destiny, unaware that one was bowling toward immortality, the other toward silence. Susan Hayward never smiled easy. Born Edith Mariner from Brooklyn, she clawed into Hollywood with a punchline, "If they want a puppet, they can hire Pinocchio." By the 1950s, she'd made defiance an art form, fiery red hair, sharper tongue. In I Want to Live, 1958, her gas chamber scene wasn't acting, it was exorcism. Tears real, fear palpable. Directors whispered, "She doesn't perform, she detonates." Off-camera, chaos mirrored her films. Broken marriages, fights with Joan Crawford, car crashes survived through grit and steel pins. When cancer took her at 57, she left an Oscar, a legend, and a lesson. You don't need to be adored, only remembered. Her Brooklyn fire burned past glamour, past pain, straight into permanence. Every woman who's ever snarled, "I can handle it," owes a spark to Susan. In 1973 Cairo, amid Bond explosions and martinis, Valerie Leon stole The Spy Who Loved Me with a single arch of her eyebrow. At 6'1", she radiated danger laced with wit, the British bombshell who could outshine gadgets. Between takes, she joked with Roger Moore, adjusted her champagne-colored gown, and told the crew, "I play smart," or "I don't play at all." Offset, Leon fenced, dated jazzmen, and silenced predators with charm and steel. By 40, she'd conquered horror, comedy, and advertising, then vanished gracefully, only to return decades later as the silver-haired face of confidence itself. Today, her legacy lives in Bond's cool women and London's camp nostalgia. When asked if she ever felt objectified, she laughed, "Darling, they objectified me, and I sent them the bill." A masterclass in surviving beauty with brains intact.
On the 1953 set of How to Marry a Millionaire, Marilyn Monroe and Lauren Bacall embodied Hollywood's eternal duel: vulnerability versus control. Bacall arrived at dawn, crisp, punctual. Marilyn drifted in at noon, eyes veiled, clutching Stanislavski. Between takes, Bacall corrected blocking, while Marilyn whispered multiplication tables to calm her nerves. The tabloids saw rivalry. The truth was reverence. Bacall envied Marilyn's innocence. Marilyn studied Bacall's authority. When Bacall quipped, "Women with glasses frighten men," Marilyn blushed behind her real prescription frames. On screen, they were opposites. Off-screen, reflections, discipline and chaos orbiting the same sun. Decades later, their performances still pulse with chemistry and contrast, proof that Hollywood's finest battles aren't catfights, but collisions of genius. Two women, one lens, and an unspoken truth. There's more than one way to rule the world.
1952. Marilyn Monroe sat at Will Wright's ice cream parlor, spoon in hand, sunlight melting vanilla faster than fame could find her. Photographer André de Dienne caught the moment Norma Jean vanished and Marilyn was born. Between bites of peppermint chip, she rehearsed breathy lines for Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, unaware the world was about to orbit her smile. Within a year, Playboy would scandalize America and her white dress would rewrite cinema. But here, amid soda fountain chatter and cheap neon, she was just a girl balancing ambition and calories, craving sugar and stardom in equal measure. The parlor's gone, the booth demolished, yet her shadow lingers on pink formica. Every influencer posing with a milkshake is chasing that same alchemy. Innocence rehearsing for immortality. In a small New York studio, 1954, Betty Page tilted her head, smiled, and redefined desire. Her leopard print bikini glistened under hot lights, every flash capturing rebellion in rhythm. A preacher's daughter turned pinup queen, she posed without shame, her laughter mocking the era's prudishness. When censorship crushed her career, she vanished, only to become underground legend. Decades later, punks, drag queens, and feminists claimed her image as armor. Betty re-emerged in the 1990s, older, wiser, still bemused. "I never knew I was famous." Her photos endure not for their scandal, but their freedom, joy unchained, gaze unflinching. She wasn't sin, she was sunlight filtered through rebellion. The world called her wicked, history calls her free. In 1975, Romy Schneider stood before Claude Chabrol's camera, cigarette trembling, eyes bottomless. Les Innocents Hommes Sales wasn't just a thriller, it was Romy's reckoning. Gone was the rosy-cheeked sissy. This was a woman sculpted by grief and brilliance. She wore Saint Laurent suits like armor, her pain distilled into elegance. Every glance whispered loss, every inhale defied it. Chabrol directed in silence. She didn't need words. When critics saw the film, Le Monde wrote, "Schneider doesn't act, she exists." Behind the poise was heartbreak too private for tabloids to touch. In her shadowed reflection, France saw not royalty, but resilience. She died young, but her eyes never did. They still flicker on screen, eternal proof that beauty, when wounded, becomes truth. At the 1985 BFI Awards, Elizabeth Taylor and Joan Collins shared a glance sharp enough to cut diamonds. One draped in violet silk, the other armored in shoulder pads. Old Hollywood and new decadence colliding. Cameras flashed as Taylor's Krupp diamond brushed Collins's Bulgari choker, a duel disguised as glamour. Behind smiles, they sparred with wit. Still working in television? How's the perfume business, darling? They weren't rivals, they were survivors. Both had been dismissed, resurrected, and now ruled again on their own terms. As champagne flowed, they toasted not youth, but endurance. 40 years later, that photo remains electric. Two legends proving relevance isn't luck, it's willpower dressed in couture. They didn't fade, they adapted. The last dragons breathing sequined fire into eternity. In the summer light of 1945, Rita Hayworth held her newborn daughter Rebecca in a Beverly Hills garden, just a mother, not the bombshell the world called Gilda. That same year, her life pinup was plastered on the first atomic bomb, while she quietly balanced stardom and sleepless nights. Orson Welles drifted across continents filming The Stranger. Rita soothed her baby to Glenn Miller tunes between studio calls. The world saw desire, not exhaustion. Yet those snapshots, Rita smiling, curls brushing her infant's cheek, show a woman trying to anchor herself in something real. Years later, Rebecca recalled her mother humming "Put the Blame on Mame" through Alzheimer's haze, still clinging to melody. Beneath the iconography, there was tenderness unmarketed, unfiltered. Rita's legacy isn't just the siren on screen, it's the woman who fought to own her image, and for a moment, her peace. Joy Lansing shimmered through the 1950s like champagne on chrome. Born Joyce Wassmansdorf, she refashioned herself into Hollywood's ultimate platinum dream. Singing torch songs in Vegas, stealing scenes in Touch of Evil, and joking, "They pay me to be a fantasy, smartest gig in town." Beneath the sequence was strategy. She wrote songs mocking silicone obsessions, invested in real estate, and navigated Sinatra's smoky world with feline grace. Tabloids gushed over Elvis flings and Cary Grant dinners, but Joy played the game on her terms. Even cancer couldn't dim her wit. She laughed that heaven better have a spotlight. Gone at 43, she left an afterglow. Her image reborn in drag pageants, her humor echoed in every woman who turned objectification into empowerment. Joy Lansing didn't just survive Hollywood's gaze, she mastered it. Summer 1971. Lana Wood reclined on a Malibu yacht, sun gilding her shoulders, free at last from her sister Natalie's shadow. Fresh from Diamonds Are Forever, she'd transformed from ingenue to icon. Her image splashed across Playboy and Beverly Hills pool decks alike. Behind the camera flashes was grit. Lana negotiated her own contracts, partied with Warren Beatty, traded jokes with Joan Collins, and once quipped, "Hollywood eats ingenues for breakfast. I brought a fork." She was both fantasy and rebellion, a woman unbothered by whispers. Decades later, her glow still defines Californian sensuality, wild, confident, unapologetic. The world remembers her as a Bond girl, but that was only a chapter. In truth, Lana's real role was herself, sun-drenched, self-made, forever walking the fine line between myth and freedom. Susanna Wirtz appeared like a snowborn apparition in 1960's St. Moritz. Fur collar, cigarette, and eyes reflecting alpine sunlight. Austrian by birth, cosmopolitan by choice, she became the face of European glamour's quiet rebellion. Photographed by slim errands on ski lodges and palace balconies, she embodied alpine noir, elegance tinged with solitude. She dined with Onassis, skied with Princess, yet answered gossip with a shrug. Snow melts, darling, only style remains. Her Vogue spreads blended mountain chill and movie heat, bridging Heidi's innocence with Dietrich's mystery. Rumors whispered of writers, chalets, and a lost film reel, maybe true, maybe not. She vanished as suddenly as she appeared. Now her legacy survives in grainy prints, her silhouette haunting winter fashion campaigns. A phantom muse in mink, frozen forever between frost and flame. Claudia Cardinale in 1963 was the embodiment of sunlit rebellion, smoke curling through laughter on the Amalfi Coast, the Mediterranean breeze tangling her curls. The leopard had crowned her Europe's untamed queen, her voice carrying the warmth of 3 languages and the weight of none. By Once Upon a Time in the West, she was myth incarnate, Leone's camera circling her like a prayer. Off-screen, Claudia fought patriarchy with wit and grace, becoming UNESCO ambassador, mother, and feminist long before the word was fashionable. While others burned out, she glowed steady. Her beauty lived in, her fame unforced. Even now, her eyes hold the summer of '63, wild, intelligent, endlessly free. She wasn't a starlet. She was the sun itself, bright, enduring, and impossible to possess. By 1968, Claudia Cardinale's legend was sealed. She moved between Fellini's surrealism and Leone's grit, her every frame charged with sensual intelligence. Born under Tunisian skies to Sicilian parents, she brought desert heat to Europe's cool cinema. Directors adored her fire, audiences her authenticity. She spoke softly yet commanded entire screens, her laughter breaking through cigarette smoke on Cinecittà sets.
Unlike her contemporaries, she refused scandal. Her rebellion was restraint. Decades later, Cannes crowned her for lifetime achievement. But her true immortality lies in those unguarded moments. Barefoot on stone steps, espresso in hand, sunlight catching the curve of a grin. Cardinale didn't chase glamour, she redefined it. Forever that same eternal summer, untamed and unhurried, her legacy humming like cicadas over a Mediterranean afternoon.
June 1929, Malibu sands, camera flashes, Douglas Fairbanks Jr. and Joan Crawford laughing under the longest day of the year. Their joy felt infinite, the Pacific sparkling like the Roaring Twenties' last toast before the crash. Nicholas Murray's lens froze youth at its apex. Crawford radiant in sunlight, Fairbanks' grin hiding old Hollywood pressure. Within months, the markets would fall and their marriage would follow. Yet in that frame, time holds its breath. Two stars, unaware the tide would soon turn. The waves erased footprints, but not memory. Each summer solstice sense, that photo replays Hollywood's golden illusion. Love, fame, light, all temporary, and all the more beautiful because of it. Malibu, 1929. Joan Crawford and Douglas Fairbanks Jr., newlyweds and icons, posed for Nicholas Murray's camera, bliss masking the storm ahead. They were Hollywood's promise, beauty, youth, optimism. Talkies were reshaping cinema. Jazz echoed from speakeasies. Wall Street teetered unknowingly on collapse. Crawford's star rose with Untamed. Fairbanks chased his father's shadow in silent adventure. On that beach, they seemed eternal, but by 1933, love had dissolved into history. Still, the photograph remains, silver grains holding laughter brighter than any reel. It's the paradox of fame, to be forever young on film while life marches mercilessly on. Their joy endures, caught between surf and silence, proof that even fleeting love can outshine time. In 1983, Australian farmer Cliff Young shuffled into the 875 kilometers Sydney to Melbourne ultramarathon wearing overalls and work boots and rewrote endurance history. While elite runners sprinted by day and slept by night, Cliff simply never stopped. He ran through darkness, steady as sunrise, his gait awkward but unstoppable. 5 days later, he crossed the finish line 10 hours ahead of the field, too humble to realize he'd changed the sport forever. He split his winnings among competitors, saying, "They all worked as hard as I did." Cliff's quiet tenacity became legend, the farmer who outran giants. His secret wasn't speed, it was purpose. Even in old age, he kept running, proving that consistency outlasts brilliance. In a world obsessed with youth, Cliff Young made perseverance heroic. Born in Barranquilla's carnival rhythm, Sofia Vergara turned vibrancy into empire. From dentistry student to runway sensation, she carved her path with laughter as her weapon. Hosting Latin American TV before conquering Hollywood, she brought Gloria Delgado Pritchett to life on Modern Family, a role that shattered stereotypes and celebrated cultural pride. Her accent, once mocked, became her signature, her humor, her power. Beyond acting, Sofia built businesses, fragrances, and philanthropic projects, redefining Latina success on her own terms. She didn't just join Hollywood, she remodeled it in Technicolor confidence. From Colombian beaches to global screens, her story proves charisma ages better than fame. Sofia Vergara is more than glamour. She's proof that authenticity, when amplified, becomes legacy. On the Riviera Cliffs in 1955, Grace Kelly leaned against a balcony rail on the set of To Catch a Thief, her ivory dress shimmering against the Côte d'Azur sun. Hitchcock's camera adored her precision, the way she tilted her chin, the composure masking curiosity. Off-camera, she laughed with Cary Grant between takes, teasing him with a glass of chilled rosé. Grace wasn't just acting, she was learning how to command stillness.
Days later, Monaco's Prince Rainier would visit that same set, a casual encounter that changed cinema and royalty alike. Watching her glide through the frame, one could sense the inevitability of destiny catching its breath. Before she was a princess, Grace Kelly was already a masterpiece of restraint, a woman who made silence glamorous and poise unforgettable.
Between takes of Ocean's 11, Dean Martin slipped into a nearby blackjack table, still in costume, cigarette glowing, martini sweating beside the chips. A tourist sat next to him, squinting. "You look a lot like Dean Martin." Without missing a beat, Dean smiled. "Thanks. Don't tell my wife. She thinks I'm Sammy Davis Jr." The man laughed, oblivious. Minutes later, a crew member called. "Dean, we're ready." The tourist froze. "Wait, you are Dean Martin." Dean winked. "Shh, pal, I'm supposed to rob this place later." It was classic Dino. Wit smoother than whiskey, charm sharper than the cards in his hand. For a moment, Vegas blurred fiction and reality, and the Rat Pack's cool ruled the desert night.
I think Valentino's talent and creativity are synonymous with Italy's own, Sophia Loren told Vogue Italia in 1992. Photographed by Michel Comte, draped in crimson silk, her words glowed with reverence. She spoke not just of fashion, but of heritage, the artistry that stitched Italy's post-war pride into couture. "He exported beauty before we exported cars," she joked. Valentino's gowns, like Lauren's presence, embodied the nation's confidence reborn, precision, passion, and poetry woven into fabric. Decades later, the image endures. A dialogue between two immortals, their red thread connecting cinema and style. The photo isn't nostalgia, it's legacy, proof that true elegance never ages, it evolves. Monica Bellucci's story unfolds like an aria, measured, powerful, unhurried. Born in Umbria's quiet hills, she traded law books for the camera's gaze, transforming Dolce & Gabbana runways into altars of Italian grace. When Milena premiered in 2000, her name became shorthand for desire tempered by intellect. In Irreversible, she confronted brutality with courage. In The Matrix Reloaded, she radiated mystery amid machines. Beyond the lens, Bellucci defied time itself, aging not as retreat but evolution. Fluent in 5 languages, she moves between continents with the same composure she brings to film. Her allure isn't youth, it's understanding. Monica Bellucci didn't inherit Italian cinema's legacy, she perfected it. In 1956, Yusuf Karsh photographed Grace Kelly just months after her royal wedding. Gone was the ingenue. In her eyes rested both serenity and farewell. The portrait, soft light, unspoken melancholy, captured a woman suspended between cinema and crown. Karsh's lens found not glamour, but grace reborn as duty. The subtle downward tilt of her chin hinted at the weight of transition, from actress to icon, from spontaneity to statehood. Decades later, the image still whispers what words can't. Beauty, when bound by destiny, becomes something rarer than fame. It becomes myth. 73 years of Isabella Rossellini, cinema's eternal chameleon. Born to Ingrid Bergman and Roberto Rossellini, she inherited artistry like a genetic code, but rewrote it in her own dialect. From Blue Velvet's shadowed seduction to Green Porno's surreal humor, Isabella made curiosity her signature. She blended intellect with whimsy, modeling for Lancôme one decade and lecturing on animal behavior the next. Her beauty was never ornamental. It was inquiry, eyes that asked, never assumed. As she turns another year, her gift endures, showing that age, like art, is just evolution made visible. She moved like jazz, syncopated, sultry, unpredictable. On stage, lights kissed her silhouette. Audiences gasped, critics scrambled for words. "A mirage you could feel," one wrote. Yet behind the velvet and applause, she scribbled notes in motel journals, mapping her escape from typecasting.
She was more than a muse, she was momentum itself. Every pose a rebellion, every glance a thesis on autonomy. The men who thought they invented her never realized she'd scripted the illusion first. Fame tried to claim her. She just danced sideways and vanished, leaving only questions, sequins, and smoke.
Margaret Nolan shimmered gold across 1964's Goldfinger, her body transformed into pop art and prophecy. Painted head to toe in metallic sheen, she embodied Bond-era decadence, beauty as weapon, allure as armor. But Nolan was more than glitter. She acted in A Hard Day's Night, spoofed horror in Carry On Screaming, and designed her own posters between shoots. A model, artist, activist, she was swinging London distilled. Decades later, her art exhibitions re-examined fame's reflections, reclaiming the image that once objectified her. The world saw a golden girl, she saw a canvas, and she signed her name in light.
Elizabeth Montgomery's twitch of the nose bewitched America in the 1960s, suburban fantasy cloaked in satin charm. Behind Samantha's perfect curls was a woman rewriting television's rules, producing episodes, demanding equal pay, and slipping feminist satire past network censors. Between takes, she joked with crew, barefoot, defiant. Her magic wasn't illusion, it was agency disguised as sparkle. When Bewitched ended, the spell lingered, women realizing they'd always had the power, they'd just been told to hide it.
In 1973, under Mexico's blinding sun, Jacqueline Bisset filmed Le Magnifique, her laughter ricocheting off white sand and turquoise waves. With tousled hair and linen dress, she embodied the effortless sensuality that defined 1970s European cinema, beauty untouched by artifice. Jean-Paul Belmondo improvised, the crew drank tequila between takes, and Bisset stayed luminous through chaos. Decades later, that image, wind in her hair, intelligence in her gaze, remains cinematic shorthand for natural allure. No scandal, no reinvention, just presence. Jacqueline Bisset didn't chase stardom, she let the world orbit her calm. She wore mischief like perfume, visible, electric, intoxicating. Every glance dared the camera closer, every smirk rewrote the rules of seduction. To fans, she was the dream in heels. To Hollywood, a storm dressed as grace. Yet beneath the eyeliner and wit was calculation, a woman who studied her lighting as keenly as her dialogue, who turned a stock villain into an immortal archetype. Directors underestimated her, co-stars fell under her spell, and the audience never recovered. When she walked away from fame, she left no scandal, only shadows of imitation. The power wasn't in her beauty, it was in her control of it. Somewhere between script and sin, she made mischief her masterpiece. Harlem, 1957. Billie Holiday and Hazel Scott share a cigarette and a laugh in the warm hum of an after-hours apartment. Roy DeCarava's camera caught what fame often missed. Two women, both prodigies and survivors, framed by soft light and jazz smoke. Hazel, the virtuoso pianist who defied segregation laws on tour. Billie, the voice that turned pain into poetry. They weren't posing, they were breathing. On the record player, Strange Fruit gave way to Ellington's brass. Someone poured cognac. Outside, Harlem's heartbeat pulsed through open windows. Decades later, the photo remains more than a document. It's communion. Two women who carried entire histories in their melodies, finally exhaling between the notes. Marilyn Monroe, born Norma Jean, made myth by 1,000 flashbulbs. Beneath the platinum gloss was intellect, rebellion, and the ache of self-invention. Hollywood saw a bombshell. She built an empire of empathy. Between Niagara and the Misfits, she studied with Strasberg, launched her own production company, and demanded control in a system built to deny it. Her marriages, DiMaggio's jealousy, Miller's disillusionment, became front-page theater, while her heart remained a battlefield of longing and pills. On August 5, 1962, she slipped quietly into legend. Yet her whisper still echoes, "I just want to be wonderful." Every Warhol print, every imitation, every white dress twirl is a resurrection of that contradiction. Fragile, fierce, forever. Mary Astor, velvet voice and diamond will. From silent ingenue to noir's most dangerous woman, she lived between scandal and reinvention. Her 1936 Purple Diary trial, pages of lovers and laughter read aloud in court, should have ruined her. Instead, she won an Oscar and her freedom. As Bridget in The Maltese Falcon, she weaponized vulnerability. As a writer, she dissected Hollywood's hypocrisy with scalpel wit. She once said she survived by being both lion and lamb, and she did. When the camera stopped, she painted sunsets in Malibu, finally unobserved. Her performances still glint like confession. Every lie delivered like truth, every truth wrapped in smoke. Anita Ekberg rose from Nordic obscurity to Roman myth, baptized in the Trevi Fountain's midnight water. Fellini called her a pagan goddess, and the world agreed. Her laugh was champagne, her gaze sin. Behind the headlines of lovers and decadence was discipline, the Miss Sweden who refused to be tamed by Hollywood, the actress who made excess an art form. She adored dogs, despised hypocrisy, and lived on her own terms long after the flashbulbs dimmed. When the tabloids mocked her solitude, she sipped Prosecco and smiled. "I regret nothing," she said. And we believed her, because some women don't fade, they echo. At the circus premiere in 1928, Charlie Chaplin and Mabel Normand stood side by side, two ghosts of a golden era meeting once more. A decade earlier, they'd built Hollywood's laughter with slapstick and rebellion. Now, one was legend, the other forgotten. Scandal had broken Mabel's career, murder rumors, addiction, exile, but not her grace. Chaplin ensured she had a seat beside him, silent tribute to the woman who once directed him. Cameras clicked, headlines ignored her. Within 2 years, she'd be gone. That photograph is her requiem. Two clowns in evening wear, smiling for a world that never forgave its pioneers. Rita Hayworth, 1941, her metamorphosis complete. The girl born Margarita Cancino had burned away in peroxide and precision, reborn as America's love goddess. George Hurrell's lens caught the exact second fantasy overtook flesh. Satin sheets, hair aflame, gaze unflinching. She'd trained for this moment, dance rehearsals with Hermes Pan, endless studio rebranding, loneliness masked in radiance. That same year, she married Orson Welles and outshone him on screen. By December, life declared her the nation's dream. Behind the gloss was exhaustion, but also power. Hayworth rewriting her own myth frame by frame. Reinvention was her rebellion, and she performed it beautifully. Betty Brosmer, the model who turned her body into both brand and manifesto. With a 36-1835 figure sculpted by willpower and marketing genius, she dominated 1950s pinup culture while keeping total control. No nudity, no exploitation, just mastery of image. When she married fitness magnate Joe Weider, she fused glamour with muscle, pioneering modern fitness media. She wrote, posed, and strategized decades before influencer existed. Every glossy photo sold not fantasy, but agency, strength, shaped, and smiling. Long before women lifted weights, Betty lifted expectations. She left this world not as a model, but as a mogul of her own making. Stella Stevens, Mississippi Fire wrapped in satin sarcasm. A single mother turned Hollywood knockout, she fought studios that wanted her dumb and smiling. In The Nutty Professor, her comic brilliance shone. In The Poseidon Adventure, she proved survival wasn't just a plot. She flirted with Elvis, defied producers, directed when few women dared. "I wasn't the damsel," she said, "I was the tornado." The industry forgot her name. History won't. Her legacy isn't in pin-up gloss. It's in the spark she left behind. Laughter laced with defiance, beauty sharpened by brains. Somewhere between vaudeville and Hollywood fantasy, Marilyn Monroe posed with Charlie McCarthy, the wooden dummy who'd once ruled radio. She giggled, he smirked. It was comedy and tragedy in one frame, the living doll and the puppet, both performing perfection. Monroe, still ascending, practiced her charm on an audience that would soon consume her. McCarthy, cigar clenched, symbolized old America, leathered, lewd, and safe. The photograph gleams with irony, one made of wood, one carved by studios, both immortal. Behind her laughter lies prophecy, the burden of always being watched, even when playing pretend. Anita Ekberg didn't just enter the frame, she conquered it. From Malmo's cold air to Rome's feverish nights, she embodied contradiction, sculpted like marble, yet entirely alive. Miss Sweden at 19, Hollywood's promise soon gave way to Fellini's immortal fountain, her laughter echoing through La Dolce Vita's moonlit water. She lived her legend too loudly for the press. Sinatra, Flynn, lawsuits, stray dogs, champagne breakfasts. And yet her defiance outlasted their gossip. When fame turned fickle, she stayed luminous, a woman who understood myth as survival. Fellini called her a pagan goddess, and he was right. Ekberg wasn't an actress, she was cinema's storm. One part fantasy, one part fury, forever splashing through history's most beautiful night. Betty Page's smile was subversion wrapped in satin. Beneath her jet bangs and whip-smart poses, a preacher's daughter rewrote America's idea of sin. In the repressed 1950s, her photos, cheeky, fearless, gleefully indecent, were rebellion in lingerie. The Senate tried to shame her. She vanished instead, trading bondage sets for Bible verses. Yet the culture she scandalized later crowned her its muse. Punk kids, feminists, and dreamers saw in Betty what she always was, freedom personified. Behind the myth stood gentleness, a woman who mailed Christmas cards and spoke softly of grace. Her fame was accidental, her influence permanent. Every confident gaze since owes her a debt. Betty Page didn't break the rules, she laughed while burning them. In the jungle lights of Bunny Yeager's 1954 shoot, Betty Page grinned like she knew the future would belong to women unafraid of themselves. Those leopard prints and ropes weren't scandal, they were satire. She understood the camera's hunger and fed it playfully, reclaiming power one pose at a time. When the backlash came, she retreated, letting her legend ferment underground. Decades later, when fans found her in a Los Angeles apartment, they discovered not a fallen icon, but a survivor who'd made peace with her own contradictions. Her faith, her joy, her myth, all coexisted. Betty Page proved that control over one's image is the purest rebellion. Haley Mills, all sunshine and innocence, smiled for the camera in 1964. Disney's last perfect ingenue before rebellion replaced wonder. The Moonspinners tried to age her gently, a romantic thriller filmed under Cretan skies, half fairy tale, half farewell. Off-screen, she bristled under contracts and curfews, her gilded cage disguised as success. By 18, she'd earned millions and seen almost none of it. The photo shows her mid-transition, plaid dress, wind in her hair, eyes already plotting escape. 2 years later, she'd break free with The Family Way, shedding Disney's halo for adulthood. In that still frame, you can almost feel the hinge creak, the end of innocence, the beginning of a woman's will. Jean Carmen hustled her way into Hollywood's glare with grit sharper than her eyeliner. A teenage golf prodigy who could outdrive men and outtalk millionaires, she swapped Arkansas poverty for Vegas champagne and scandal. Howard Hughes courted her, Elvis flirted, Sinatra cheered her poolside. Yet the fame she touched slipped like smoke.
too wild, too knowing, too real. When the spotlight faded, she reinvented herself as a trick shot artist, then a ghostwriter, always just one secret away from tabloid resurrection. Her memoir, decades late, read like pulp fiction, only it was all true. Jean Carmen was proof that Hollywood's underbelly glittered brighter than its stars. Sophia Loren's 1955 Stockholm press debut shimmered with prophecy. 21, luminous, unapologetic, she answered in smoky Italian-accented English, already aware the world was watching. Journalists saw beauty, she offered intellect. Beside her, Carlo Ponti whispered strategy. Beyond her, Hollywood waited. She was no starlet, she was an empire forming. Within years, she'd conquer both worlds, the art house goddess and the mainstream muse. Those photos, emerald dress, half smile, capture ambition mid-flight. War's hunger had honed her, poverty had armored her, and cinema was her chosen battlefield. By night's end, even the Arctic sun refused to set. Neither would she.
At 85, Sophia Loren laughed off mortality. "Mistakes," she said, "are the dues for living fully." From Naples slums to Oscar stages, her life was operatic. Love, scandal, resilience. She turned survival into poise, heartbreak into melody. While Hollywood sculpted perfection, Loren kept her edges. Woman, mother, warrior. Her defiance was sensuality with substance. Now she cooks pasta in Geneva, wears her legend lightly, and reminds us that glamour was never surface, it was endurance in satin form. Everything she owed to spaghetti? Perhaps, but cinema owes everything to her.
Bonjour, an invitation, a wink. The name Brigitte Bardot drifts through Saint-Tropez sunlight like perfume and rebellion combined. She was France's siren call to freedom, her silhouette the blueprint of the modern muse. Even written in French, her myth feels universal: light, salt, and scandal. Whether under Cannes chandeliers or on sunburned cobblestones, Bardot embodied what language can't quite capture: je ne sais quoi. Her voice, her gaze, her existence, each a revolution disguised as charm. The world didn't just watch her, it surrendered.
Brigitte Bardot was not made, she erupted. And God-created woman didn't just launch her, it detonated post-war decorum. Barefoot in Saint-Tropez, she turned the beach into a manifesto. Directors adored her, the church condemned her, and fashion immortalized her. Her pout became currency, her freedom contagion. Yet fame's glare seared her spirit. At 39, she abandoned film for animal rights, swapping cameras for causes. Decades later, politics muddied her myth, but the image remained untouchable. Tousled hair, defiant smile, sunlight personified. Bardot was both muse and mirror, a woman who made desire a language the world still struggles to translate. Piper Laurie's eyes carried both fury and grace. Hollywood tried to soften her, she hardened instead. Leaving studio fluff for the stage, she returned with the hustler, bleeding truth into every line. Then came Carrie, where her whisper became terror, and Twin Peaks, where it twisted into wit. She was never predictable, only precise. Off-screen, she spoke openly of her hearing loss, her faith in art over fame. When she died, it wasn't silence that followed, it was reverence. From ingenue to iconoclast, Piper Laurie proved that brilliance hides best in shadows. Betty Page emerged from Nashville's shadows with a grin that disarmed Puritan America. Her bangs framed more than beauty, they framed rebellion. In 1950s New York, she ruled the underground lens of Irving Klaw, where satin ropes, laughter, and defiance collided. Bunny Yeager's Jungle Shoot turned her into mythology, sun, skin, and mischief weaponized against repression. Yet the fame she sparked burned fast. By 1957, she vanished into faith and silence, chased by scandal and the Senate.
Decades later, punk revivalists rediscovered her as muse and martyr. The woman who posed in bondage became a symbol of autonomy. Betty's legacy isn't scandal, it's sovereignty. Behind the smile was a truth America wasn't ready for, a woman owning her image before the world knew what that meant. Under the flashbulbs, Betty Page smiled like she knew she was rewriting morality one pose at a time. Each whip, wink, and curve was performance art disguised as sin. Her career lasted barely 5 years, but the ripples shook a century. When the censors called her obscene, she disappeared, only to return decades later as the blueprint for rebellion. Her contradictions became her crown: Christian, feminist, provocateur, recluse. By the time the world caught up, she was gone, content, forgiven, perhaps finally free. Betty didn't ask permission to exist, she gave the world permission to want. Every Betty Page photograph is a paradox: innocence with intent, laughter laced with danger. Behind her smile lay scars of poverty and survival. Before her lens, America's veneer cracked. She was the 1950s id made flesh, an icon of control disguised as surrender. When she vanished, the myth only grew. Artists resurrected her as punk saint, nor goddess, feminist symbol. Yet Betty herself lived quietly, unbothered by the cult her image built. She left no manifesto, just a legacy whispered through generations. Be your own spectacle. In 1946, Norma Jean posed for her first studio portraits. Wide-eyed, brunette, still unpolished. Beneath the soft curls, a star was forming molecule by molecule. The camera caught hope, not fame, longing, not legend. Within a year, she'd trade anonymity for illusion, dye her hair gold, and invent Marilyn Monroe. That photograph remains her most honest moment, the pause before metamorphosis. You can see the dream forming behind the gaze, a girl rehearsing immortality. Before tragedy, before myth, there was only belief. And that, more than anything, is what made her unforgettable. Judy Garland sang as if survival required it. From vaudeville to Oz to the edge of oblivion, her voice carried the ache of generations. MGM crafted her as America's sweetheart, then fed her pills to keep her perfect. She loved fiercely, fell harder, and rose every time to applause that couldn't save her. Carnegie Hall in '61 was her resurrection, a woman broken but incandescent, commanding eternity with a microphone. When she died, the rainbow dimmed but didn't disappear. Judy remains the patron saint of resilience, the girl who taught us that home isn't a place, it's a song. Natalie Wood's eyes always hinted at something unspoken: fear, desire, maybe both. From child prodigy to Hollywood's fragile goddess, she lived on film and drowned in speculation. Rebel Without a Cause gave her ache a name. West Side Story gave it melody. Off-screen, her life was a loop of beauty and tragedy, love triangles, whispered jealousy, a yacht, and a night that never stopped echoing. The tabloids chase her ghost, her films keep her alive. Natalie wasn't a mystery to solve, she was emotion personified. Watch her once more and you'll understand. She never played roles, she confessed them. Jean Patchett, 1949, flaw sculpted into form. Erwin Blumenfeld's lens captured the decade's heartbeat in her tilted chin and veiled eyes. She wasn't just a model, she was the silhouette of aspiration. Dior's new look, Penn's minimalism, Avedon's motion, all found their muse in her symmetry. That single mole became punctuation on an era. Her gaze floats just past us, as if seeing a world too elegant for words. Fashion photography has rarely been so precise or so human. Patchett didn't just wear couture, she wore the century's dream of perfection. Showgirls strutted into 1995 like a fever dream of glitter and bad decisions. Paul Verhoeven's neon opera of ambition, lust, and satire turned Las Vegas into purgatory, and Elizabeth Berkley into a martyr of misunderstood art. Laughed at, condemned, then reborn as cult gospel, it became cinema's most scandalous resurrection. Beneath the sequins and sleaze hides critique, bodies for sale, dreams devoured, America unmasked. Time turned mockery into admiration. Showgirls isn't just trash, it's truth wrapped in rhinestones. Sometimes excess tells the story restraint never could.
Gail Patrick's elegance could cut glass. In Ritchie's 1937 portrait, she's pure voltage. Fur collar, sculpted cheekbones, eyes that know too much. On screen, she was the woman men underestimated and audiences adored. The witty schemer, the self-possessed villainess. Off-screen, she was rarer still. A producer before women were allowed ambition. Perry Mason was her empire, intellect her weapon. The glamour was armor, the smile a strategy. In an age that feared women with power, Gail Patrick simply became it. Marilyn Monroe deserves her story told with tenderness, not tragedy porn. She was intellect disguised as allure, a woman who studied craft while the world studied her curves. Modern retellings linger on her pain, forgetting her rebellion, demanding pay parity, founding her own studio, defying the men who built her myth. To honor her is to watch Some Like It Hot and see comedic genius, to read her poetry and feel her mind burned through ink. Hollywood keeps killing her for drama. History should let her live for brilliance. Debbie Reynolds lit up Hollywood with laughter that could chase the storm away. From Miss Burbank at 16 to Singin' in the Rain's unstoppable Kathy Selden, she danced not by training but by defiance. MGM built her as America's sweetheart, yet heartbreak never spared her. Eddie Fisher's betrayal made headlines, but she turned pain into punchline. Vegas shows, film revivals, memorabilia empires. Reynolds preserved Hollywood's soul when the studios forgot it. When daughter Carrie Fisher died, Debbie followed a day later, as if love refused distance. Her story ends where music begins. One more twirl, one more wink, forever unsinkable. Greta Garbo remains cinema's most exquisite disappearance. Born poor in Stockholm, she rose to MGM's marble throne. Her silence in Flesh and the Devil louder than any monologue. When she finally spoke, "I want to be alone," the world mistook solitude for sadness. After Two-Faced Woman, she vanished into New York shadows, trench coat and dark glasses, a myth among mortals. Lovers speculated, biographers chased ghosts, but Garbo stayed loyal only to privacy. She built her legend by leaving it unfinished, proof that mystery is the truest kind of immortality. Jane Mansfield lived like a flashbulb, brilliant, brief, impossible to ignore. She engineered scandal as strategy, laughter as armor. Behind the pink convertibles and heart-shaped pools beat a mind that understood spectacle better than any studio executive. Hollywood wanted a caricature. Jane gave them control. She won a Golden Globe, raised 5 children, and still made headlines just by walking into a room. Then, one foggy night in 1967, the dream ended in Twisted Metal. But fame never dies, it just changes shape. Jane remains a neon ghost, winking from eternity, the blonde who dared to outshine her myth. Gloria Graham played sin like a sonnet. Her voice purred, her eyes plotted, her lips promised ruin. She burned brightest in the bad and the beautiful, a woman both weapon and wound. Off-screen, her life mirrored noir, scandal, forbidden love, whispered taboos. She loved recklessly, worked relentlessly, and faded quietly, teaching cinema one final truth: tragedy wears lipstick. Even in her decline, she remained luminous, fragile, fearless, unforgettable.
Vivien Leigh glowed like something born for Technicolor, beauty carved in tragedy. Gone with the Wind made her eternal. A Streetcar Named Desire made her human. Behind the applause, she fought bipolar storms and the disintegration of her marriage to Olivier. Each role became confession, each performance resurrection. When she died in 1967, she left behind 2 Oscars, a dozen masterpieces, and the ache of perfection never satisfied. Vivien didn't just play heroines, she became their ghost. New York, 1977. Debbie Harry and David Bowie in electric communion. 2 aliens in human skin, both baptized by stage light. Chris Stein's lens caught them mid-revolution. Punk and glam entwined, glitter as gospel. They weren't posing, they were transmitting. For one heartbeat, music, danger, and beauty shared the same frequency. A rare photo of Marvin before the accident, 1994. Eyes still wild, laughter unbroken. You can almost feel the motion, the youth suspended seconds before everything changed. Photographs like this lie. They pretend time is merciful. But memory, sharper than film, remembers the before as both blessing and curse. She moved like rhythm incarnate. Legs for miles, fire behind poise. The studio called her their secret weapon. The press called her perfection. They never saw the braces from childhood polio or the grit that turned pain into pirouette. Each dance defied the odds, each scene a reclamation. Want to know her name? It's written where the spotlight ends and resilience begins.
Vivien Leigh again, that Hamilton woman, 1941. Empire corseted in sorrow. Napoleon may rage, cannons may thunder, yet her eyes command the frame. Cinema was black and white, she made it blood and silk. Watching her now feels like trespass, too intimate, too alive. Venice, 1958. Brigitte Bardot turned the lagoon into a runway. Striped top, capri pants, sun in her hair. Scandal became fashion, rebellion became art. She divorced Vadim, kissed freedom, and rewrote femininity between gondolas and flashbulbs. The world gasped, she smiled. Behind the myth was method. Bardot the strategist, the activist, the anarchist muse. The pigeon she saved in Piazza San Marco lived. So did her legend. Decades later, her name still tastes like salt, sun, and defiance.